I've often talked about panic in the Conservative Party and how that panic might come about. So we've talked about the tri-election where the true panic would have come if they'd lost all three. But there has been a different kind of panic come out of the Conservative Party. The idea that they managed to win Uxbridge because of anti-green policies. And because of this, you went into a Conservative Party conference where Rishi Sunak announces the closing or the ending of HS2, that the northern leg from Birmingham to Manchester wasn't going to get built, but there was still going to be, of course, the London to Birmingham line, but it was not going to be at the full capacity. So instead of being able to run at 12 trains, it's only going to be able to run at 6, which, to be honest, is not much capacity at all. And he was being pitched at that conference that Sunak was going to come out of that conference as the change bringer. That instead of being, Sunak, the safe, steady pair of hands, he was going to be Sunak, the change bringer. Sunak, the guy who can make the right calls and make hard choices. But that did not happen. That was not the perception that came out of that Conservative Party conference. And we have now had 2 further big defeats in by-elections, which have now triggered even more panic. So what does this panic look like? Well, recently, the Southern the Southern and East Rail Group, who are a passengers' rights group, attended an event. And what they came away with speaks volumes, because if this is true, Rishi Sunak is running around number 10. No one knows what he's going to say next. No one knows what policies he's going to try and come up with next. There's rumors that the King's speech is going to be all about, pro-road, anti-green, anti-net zero stuff, which I'm sure Charles is going to be wonderful having to say all that, considering how pro-green a person he was. That's not going to have changed overnight. But one of the things that comes out of this is that Rishi Sunak is now in one-man band territory, with ministers struggling to try and keep up, not even knowing what he is going to say next. This is what true panic looks like. So before we go into having a look what the Rail Delivery Group said about this, because, again, massively highlights the panic currently in the Conservative Party, but also the fact that Rishi Sunak is just completely flying by the seat of his pants. So before we do get into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And of course, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. There's, of course, the YouTube thank you button and, of course, the Pony Club as well down below. So let's have a look at what they had to say on this. So this was the Southern and East Rail Delivery Group, and they put this out on Twitter. So, feedback from Friday's lunch with friends from the Department for Transport, Treasury, and Cabinet Office. A couple of other friends from the HO and FCD were also there. Where they're saying HS2 is now still up in the air, so to speak. So Sunak, because closing this HS2 was actually seen as quite a bad move. So they are now saying HS2 still up in the air. There might be a U-turn on it. There might be something coming in the next couple of weeks. We don't know, because, as we said, Sunak just does not know what he's doing. And they continue. They says no one knows what the PM is going to say next, and when he does, ministers scramble to fall in line. So no one knows what he's going to say. No one knows what he's going to do. Next part. Even if it's ridiculous guff, ministers get behind it, determined to sell off land regardless. determined to cut down HS2 Phase 1 as much as possible. PM still determined that getting it to Euston should not happen if at all possible. Hunt, however, still wants it, but money is the issue. Who will pay for it and exactly what? Remember, the first HS2, which was, of course, the Eurotunnel link, that had to be paid for by private companies. Margaret Thatcher at the time convinced private companies to get behind that and build HS1. And that's what they're hoping to do now. But with a government that refuses to sort of back rail travel and HS2, they don't look as if these companies are willing to invest in that way unless the government, ponies up some serious money to be able to do it. And they were doing that. But they ain't going to get that. And then, of course, it continues. So even if it does get there, it will reduce the development of the current Euston Station cope. East West Rail, Ministers still looking at ways to stop it getting to Cambridge. And to only provide a minimal service. Much enthusiasm for the East West Superhighway. So they would rather instead of building, a train route, which would be much, much better for it, they would rather build a East-West superhighway. Next part. The PM is rumored to be preparing a big pro-road announcement in the lead up to the general election, as well as other anti-environmental and anti-net zero policies. It is hard to assess accurately, as no one seems to be able to anticipate what the PM will say next. One-man band territory. And then finally, no progress on NPR or the Fantasy Network North, which we always said wasn't going to happen. It's not, Network North. It's North Network suggestions, ideas we maybe could do, but we're not bothered if we're going to pursue them. Total silence on rolling stock, infrastructure, etc. Still apparent enthusiasm for ticket office closures and general staff reductions. That is not a good sign. That is not a good sign coming from the fact that you've got a PM not really knowing what he's going to say, ministers not knowing what he's going to be saying either, trying to scramble once the PM said it to try and do it. You've still got the question of HS2 completely up in the air, still trying to decide whether or not it's going to go to Euston. Jeremy Hunt still wants it to go to Euston. If you saw some of the videos this week of Euston Station, in particular, you saw the massive congestion, the massive amount of passengers trying to use Euston Station this weekend. And yet we're being told, no, we shouldn't expand Euston Station because no one uses it. You can find videos of just this last weekend from several train delays and cancellations that caused Euston Station to become a massive bottleneck. If you expand Euston Station, you expand the capacity, you can get more trains there. Shockingly, it's not rocket science, but apparently it is hard for Rishi Sunak to try and understand that. Every single time we get this again and again and again when it comes to these infrastructure projects like HS2. If you build it, you increase capacity, you increase the amount of trains you can run, meaning that more people can use it and it becomes more reliable. It is not hard to do, guys. But this is worrying coming from a government that doesn't know what it's going to do next and is randomly running around saying, well, we might do this. And then ministers are going, what do we do? How do we achieve that? This is, once again, not how you should be running a government. It's really worrying that this is it. But this is what I've talked about before about Tory panic. This is what it results in. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.